Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another Gambling Did You Know session. We're going to go ahead, I'll share my screen, and we can get started today. So, um, as usual, we're trying to kind of relate this topic to something that's happening in the community. So, we're going to be talking today about gambling and the importance of well-being. And I'll get to why we're going to be talking about that in just a second, but I want to start by just considering what the term well-being means. And really there's no, single definition that encompasses all of, what well-being is. It can mean slightly different things to different people. So I don't really even have a full definition here today, but most definitions do kind of involve this part. So thinking positively about life, feeling good. Again, whatever that kind of means to the person, that's generally what we're going to just start with when we're talking about well-being today. So, it's in the same way that when we consider health, it's more than just, your physical health. The same is true about well-being. So it's more than just a person's physical health, but we're also talking about things related to, their economic standing, their social status, along with their emotional well-being. So all of this kind of gets rolled up into one thing, and that's what we kind of consider well-being in general. So again, why are we talking about this today? Why are we relating well-being to gambling in the first place? The reason for that is today and this week is World Wellbeing Week. So what this means is it's kind of a time to celebrate different aspects of our well-being. Again, we're trying to consider the whole part of a person as opposed to just, this person looks healthy or, they're eating healthy, something like that. We're talking about things, related to financial security. They're able to kind of support themselves or their family or work with their family to support themselves. Again, physical health, that is a piece of it, but also mental health, emotional health, being resilient. So, able to deal with different situations and kind of, stand back up if you get knocked down. That's kind of what that means in a general sense, along with being empathetic as people and also our leadership. So, just being polite, just understanding where other people are coming from and trying to kind of put yourself in their shoes. This is kind of definitely a big piece of our well-being and our kind of societal well-being, I guess, along with those community relationships, making sure that we're building those and paying attention to those, and things as far reaching as caring for the environment. So you can see how these pieces are a lot more involved, and really we all, as again a society, need to come together to support and work at each of these things. So it's not even just necessarily one person themselves. It's kind of all of these things coming together, all of us coming together. And that is, why we have a whole week devoted to the well-being. So again, that's why we are tying in gambling to this today. And we're going to kind of go from here on out, starting to talk about the gambling piece of this, how this can affect our well-being, and also why, it's important to consider our well-being when we're talking about gambling. So, the first question, and it's definitely an important question to ask, is gambling all bad? So, is, this just a negative behavior? Is it, really just bad to gamble in general? And the answer really is not necessarily. A lot of people do gamble, and they can gamble. And really the majority of people who do gamble do so in a way that is not harmful to themselves. It's not harmful to other people. It's just kind of social activity for them. So, that's kind of what we can call these people, is social gamblers or recreational gamblers. And there's different criteria that would make a person a recreational gambler as opposed to the other option, which is problem gambling, which we'll get to in just a second. But these are the things we want to look for. These are kind of the good habits to have, and that would kind of consider a person to be a recreational gambler. So something like just gambling every once in a while, it's not, an everyday activity, or you don't have to be gambling all the time. Gambling with either a small amount of money that's relative to the person. So, something that a person can afford to lose. You're not putting up too much money for yourself. It's just, this is, again, kind of recreational, or it's money that you don't necessarily need. Gambling, again, for fun or to socialize, it is kind of a social activity. It can be a fun activity. You're not going into it thinking, I'm going to walk away winning a bunch of money. That's definitely a bad thing to kind of go into this having that thought, as well as understanding that if you're betting against the house, so if you're going to a casino or a racetrack or something like that, if you're betting against the house as opposed to just having your poker game in your basement with your friends, if you're betting against the house, it's impossible to make a profit in the long run. That's something that you can get lucky, you can potentially make some money in the short term, but the odds are designed so that you will lose money the longer you play. So just kind of being aware of that, as well as not hiding your gambling from other people. That's a big red flag. You shouldn't, be ashamed of it if you're just recreational gambling. And again, you're not going to be preoccupied with it, or you're not going to have trouble stopping when you should, or when, you don't have time for gambling. So all of this kind of rolls up into this last one, is not having any gambling misconceptions or fallacies. That's something that we've definitely covered and talked about. But, having those beliefs where, again, I'm going to make money off of this. This is going to be, really good for me. I'm going to become rich because of my gambling. That's a very big common misconception there. So again, that's what would be considered a recreational gambler. Now, kind of the flip side of things, what happens if you do gamble too much? And this is, not necessarily just gambling too much in one day. It's kind of a repeated pattern. So that's really when we can start to talk about, problem gambling. That's also basically called gambling disorder if that is actually diagnosed. And it can be diagnosed, but that is kind of the same thing. Problem gambling, gambling disorder, it's just two different terms for the same thing. Basically, it's where a person is, potentially seeing negative effects of their gambling, but they feel like they can't stop. It's, where we throw around the term addiction sometimes. That is kind of the same thing, a gambling addiction, gambling disorder, problem gambling. And one thing I definitely want to just make sure is known, I think this is probably, most people would realize this, but gambling does not just lead to financial struggles. It's not just about the money. Actually, people who do struggle with gambling, it's not necessarily even about the money at all. It's just, that behavior, they feel like they have to do it, even if they're seeing those negative effects, and it can affect many different parts of their lives, including their well-being. So that's what we're going to talk about next, but just right before that, just some signs and symptoms of problem gambling. So, if you're seeing some of these signs in someone that you care about, it's definitely a great idea to reach out to them, potentially reach out for additional help as well. So, just really, you want to make sure, either in yourself or that other person, if they're kind of exhibiting these signs, it's probably time for additional help. So again, being preoccupied with gambling, really focused on it when, there's not necessarily a reason to be focused on it, or, you're just preoccupied in your everyday life with gambling, chasing losses. This is, again, where you're thinking you can still win money with gambling, or you went to the casino, you lost some money yesterday, but you know what, I'm going to go back today because I can win that money back. That is just setting yourself up actually for failure. It's going to potentially lead to more losses, and probably lead to more losses. And that's why we call it chasing losses, not chasing wins. But other ones include difficulty cutting back. Again, if you can't stop, or this person can't stop gambling or decrease their gambling, or it's hard to do so, that's definitely a good sign there, as well as just being, cranky or irritable when you're trying to cut down. Those obviously go hand in hand there, but lying or hiding any gambling activities, again, as I mentioned, that's a big red flag there. But also you want to think about why the gambling is happening in the first place. Is this just again, just a social activity, something for fun? Or are you actually using it to escape problems or, again, hide from, something that was going on at work or school or something like that? Or you're really just using gambling to, pick yourself back up. That's potentially dangerous as well. Obviously, if a person is committing illegal acts to pay for gambling, that's not normal. That's not necessarily, or that's definitely not a good sign. It definitely does happen. And, again, that's just kind of one sign that a person should be reaching out for additional help. And if you're relying on others to gamble, you need IOUs, or you're needing to be bailed out from gambling debts, or you are just increasing the amount of money that you're gambling with, doing the penny slots or something like that, that doesn't, do it for you anymore. You're not interested in that. You need to be spending more money. That's definitely a red flag as well. So all of these things, again, if you are, or you're seeing these signs in someone you care about, definitely try to reach out for help. I'll have resources at the end as usual. But again, I mentioned this at the beginning, that the gambling doesn't just lead to financial problems. These are all types of problems that are related to gambling. And you'll notice the first one is money problems or financial problems. This is probably the most common, but again, it's not the only one by any means. So probably if you're seeing money problems, there's probably at least some of these other problems going along with that. So something like emotional problems, it's not necessarily causing depression and anxiety, but it can definitely really increase, the symptoms of those things and the problems themselves. So you might be feeling guilt. Again, you might be dealing with more depression or anxiety than in the past. It can be a really stressful thing emotionally, as well as, for relationships, your family and friends. It can put a big strain on any relationship that you have, as well as, you might be skipping out of, school or work, requirements, if there are things that you're supposed to be doing to gamble. That's definitely not going to be beneficial. That is going to lead to other problems as well. And gambling actually can lead to health problems. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But definitely legal problems as well. If a person is engaging in any illegal behavior to finance their gambling, or to, gamble in a different way, obviously that can lead to legal problems there. So again, how can gambling actually affect our health? It seems like it's potentially unrelated to our health, but again, it is actually an addictive behavior. So if a person is developing that gambling disorder, problem gambling, that's actually kind of changing how their brain is working. So it's actually, making that person crave gambling in the same way that, substance use is addictive. It can actually lead to, changing how the brain works. It works the same. Gambling, it can be as addictive as drug use. So that's something that I think is still overlooked sometimes. Sometimes people are just, think it's still willpower or something like that. It actually can be a disease. It actually changes how the brain works. So that's definitely going to have an impact on your health. We already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but just to stress it again, too much gambling can lead to these things. It can lead to increased stress. It can lead to, more anxiety or depression, or kind of increase those symptoms of these things, as well as there is definitely a strong link between gambling problems and thoughts of suicide. Actually, gambling disorder is, the highest addictive behavior for the suicide rate. It has the highest suicide rate for any addictive behavior. And part of that is just due to the money aspect of it, again, as well as those other things, but it can really be, feel like there's no way out for a lot of people who do deal with this problem. So that's definitely a huge thing that we need to work on, is, decreasing those thoughts of suicide and getting additional help if we're seeing any any possible sign of that. And again, gambling can also affect the people that we care about. So I want to go back to just take another look at these gambling related problems. If you think about it, none of these kind of are just affecting the single person, right? So, you could say the money problems, that's just affecting you, but if you have a family, if you have, friends even, or something like that, that can still have a toll on those relationships. If you have a huge amount of debt due to gambling, that can definitely take a toll on, again, your family finances, or it's going to kind of limit at least what you can do with your family or friends or things like that. Going out, you're probably not going to be able to do that if you have a lot of debt or you're facing financial problems due to your gambling. Same thing with, these other things. If you're dealing with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, that's going to potentially put more strain as well on those relationships. If you're struggling with work or school, you might kind of increase all of these things. You might be dealing with more anger or depression again, and that's going to kind of just circle back to the people that you care about. Same thing with health problems or legal problems. So that's kind of what I wanted to just kind of mention is, obviously, with what we had talked about, well-being, considering basically all of these things, if gambling is affecting, my health or my well-being, it's probably affecting the people that I care about as well. So now that we've gone through all of that, I just want to talk a little bit about how to either prevent or avoid problem gambling. And this is definitely simplifying it. So basically, if you are at the recreational gambler level right now, you just gamble every once in a while for fun or something like that, we're going to look at the left side first here. So if you do choose to gamble, and again, you're following the laws and things like that, these are things that you can do to kind of make sure that you're not getting into the problem gambling area, right? So, setting money and time limits. If you're going to the casino, make sure you bring a watch or something like that. You have your phone, so that you're not going to, just keep gambling throughout the whole night, because a lot of times they don't have clocks, for the reason of a lot of people will just kind of gamble more than they had originally planned on because they don't know what time it is. So doing that for yourself, making sure you're setting those time and money limits and never exceeding them, whether it's your budget or your time budget, that's something that you want to be aware of there. You don't want to ever borrow money to gamble. That's definitely can get really messy really quick. You want to know the risks. That's good that you're here. If you're watching this video, something like this can be really beneficial. So really, finding out what those risks are, finding out how dangerous gambling can be, that is just kind of more knowledge and going to help you out in the long run there. Always make sure you're playing for fun and not to win money. Again, that's really probably the biggest thing. If you think you can, win money, or you're going into it to win money, that's definitely not a great idea. And you want to definitely balance gambling with other healthy activities. So now on the right side, if you don't already gamble, or you're not interested in gambling, or maybe you have gambled in the past, you kind of had problem gambling, or you had developed gambling disorder, and now you're trying not to gamble. These are things that you can do to kind of avoid that again. So make sure, just very basic things, doing some sort of physical activity, whatever it is that you enjoy. If you're doing something that, you feel like you have to run or something like that, that's, not the only form of physical activity. Just moving your body any kind of way that you enjoy, that's something that I definitely would like to stress, because if you enjoy it, then it's just going to be a lot better for you in the long run. Meditation is definitely a great option for just kind of clearing the mind and making sure that, your body and your mind are in sync. Always spending time with family and friends, especially those who don't gamble. That's going to lead to a lot of other activities that you can do, and it's probably going to be a lot of fun. Volunteering or giving back, that's always a great option, and I think we can get a lot from that. So if you're interested in that, you can find any number of places to volunteer and help out. Travel, that's definitely a big one. It's, really great to get out in nature and things like that. or just kind of see different cultures in different parts of the world. And finally, explore different hobbies or new hobbies, any number of things related to anything that we've talked about today, or something else that you want to try. That's always a great option to just see what's out there. And finally, I just have a couple of resources as usual. So again, we have the Michigan Problem Gambling Helpline, the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network Crisis Helpline. You can always go to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, their website, and you can actually find a lot of help for the state of Michigan, even down to your specific county. So that's really a great place to start, as well as the National Council on Problem Gambling and Responsible Gambling Council. And finally, we have our number in our website, LAHC. So you can always reach out to us with any questions as well, and we would definitely be happy to help you out in any way that we can. So if you do know someone, or maybe you need additional information on gambling resources, prevention, treatment, all of these places are a great place to start. And with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in as usual today. And we will see you next time with another Gambling Did You Know session.